Edwin?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it now.
Not yet. Oh yeah, now it's visible.
Kelvin, you can start.
All right. I welcome you all, and I think you have a very good morning today. We are the group 1, and we are presenting financial evaluation of 2 companies in our case, that is Old Mutual and Nico Holdings. My name is Kelvin, and I've got my colleagues Edwin Suzy and Flaviano Kanyika. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our presentation outline, where we're looking at introduction, methodologies, company profile, financial statements, financial ratios, key findings, and indeed conclusions and recommendations. Since I'm the first presenter, I will take you through the first 3. As an overview of the 2 companies, we found that the 2 companies conduct more or less like same business, and their business portfolios are general life insurance, pension funds management, property management, and others. So our financial analysis will concentrate on their profitability, liquidity, efficiency, and indeed the investment ratios. Since we have already highlighted that these are public firms, so they are mandated to provide annual reports to shareholders and public, which information is crucial for decision making. So these 2 companies, they operate in the very same industry, which have got the very same, the very same environment. Yeah. So for us to arrive at the decision of collecting these 2 companies, we had to use our own methodologies, and the choice for the firms that we used, we looked at the companies with similar financial backgrounds, and also companies with similar business models. And this data was collected from their websites. So in terms of techniques, we used 2 techniques which have actually helped us to analyze these 2 companies. So we have the performance matrices, which has actually helped us to look at the liquidity of these 2 companies, cash flows, and their debt ratios. And also the common size analysis, which has actually helped us to look at the choices of the same of these 2 companies. In terms of the characteristics of these 2 companies, Old Mutual, to begin with, Old Mutual is a tied and independent. It has got tied and independent advisors, and the branches, direct and digital channels. It has got the company has got here subsidiaries which are operating in different sectors. For example, they operate in life savings, life and savings, property and car, casualty insurance, asset management, and banking and lending. So in terms of the financial highlights of Old Mutual, the profit grew by 4.5%, that is the 2022 analysis that we are looking at. And also their shareholder equity had increased by 12%, that is according to the 2022 records. In terms of Nico Holdings, it also operates within the very same category. Basically, it provides life insurance products and services, which also does like a life policy, pension management, bank portfolios management, and the casualty insurance. In terms of its financial highlights, as of 2022, that is the year that we have actually taken for our analysis. So the profit grew by 205%, and shareholder equity had also increased by 32%. I think my colleagues will actually take me from there.
Thank you, everyone. Fabiano, can you go to the previous slide?
This one?
The other slide, I'm wondering. Yeah, this slide, I'm wondering, it's not showing the other side.
Oh. This is the edited one. This is the final document.
Okay. I think something must be wrong. Anyway. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Is everyone able to see my screen?
Not yet.
Proceed, Edwin. We can see it.
All right. I'll just take you through the financial statements for the two firms, Old Mutual and NICO. As you can see from the graph here, for the year ended December 2022, NICO had a great revenue compared to Old Mutual at 104 billion. The same applies for the cost of goods sold. They are more or less tight at 76, the other one at 79 billion. The operating costs for Old Mutual, for NICO, was on the higher side than for Old Mutual at 228 billion, 253 billion compared to Old Mutual 104 billion. Overall, for the year ended 2022, NICO had much profit at 37 billion compared to Old Mutual at 7 billion. In terms of the assets value for the two firms, for the year ended December 2022, NICO had approximately 1 trillion in assets, while Old Mutual had about 6 billion in assets. In terms of the liabilities, the two firms for Old Mutual had a debt ratio of 0.9. This represents about 90% of the company's assets being liable for debts, which can pay off the debts. Old Mutual had a higher match debt ratio at 0.94, and this represents that about 94% of its assets can cover its liabilities. Just to mention, to highlight the debt ratio, the higher the debt ratio, the higher the financial risk for these companies to be able to pay off their debts. For the shareholder equity, Old Mutual managed to retain about 12% of the capital invested by the shareholders back, while NICO had a higher return on equity of about 32%. On the cash flow is just about the ability of the firm to generate revenue from its operating activities. Looking at the cash flow to debt ratio of Old Mutual had about 65%, while NICO had 4%. On the free cash flow, which is the cash remaining for a firm to use for its day-to-day activities, and this is the cash that's left from the operating activities or generated from operating activities. Old Mutual had a positive cash flow, while NICO had a negative cash flow. This represents that Old Mutual can generate more cash from its core operating activities, which they can use to finance itself for growth, as well as returning to shareholders, and also help in debt reduction. Operating cash flow, Old Mutual had 56%, while NICO had 4% in terms of operating cash flow. This is the firm's ability to generate revenue from its operating activities in relation to its net sales. It's also a measure of a firm's ability to generate cash in comparison with the cost of goods sold. And the cash flow margin, Old Mutual had about 800%, while NICO had 3.6%. The cash flow margin, just a proportion of the net income generated that can be converted into operating cash flow. And this cash is generated from the company's core operating activities. I think at this juncture, let me hand over to Fabiano to take us through the rest of the slides.
Okay, let me share my screen then.
Oh, great.
I hope you can all see my screen. Hello?
I can see it.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go through the financial ratios. So we have the liquidity ratios, which is the ability for a firm to pay its short-term loans. The ratio is calculated by dividing the current assets over the current liabilities. So as for Old Mutual, it has 1.066 as the current ratio, and NICO has 1.113, which is good for both companies because they can be able to pay the short-term loans. We also have the solvency ratios, which is the ability for a firm to pay its long-term ratios, which is calculated by dividing the total equity over the total debt. So as for Old Mutual, it has 6.6%. NICO has 11.2%, which indicates that 11.2% of NICO's assets are funded by equity. So NICO is on the high side. In terms of profitability ratios, we have the gross profit margin, which indicates profitability from key operations. Operation profit margin, which indicates revenue left from cost of goods and services and operating costs. And then we have the net profit margin, which indicates revenue left for a firm after deduction of all expenses. And then we have return on capital employed, which measures profitability in relation to the investment done. So as you can see on the graphical presentation, NICO is performing much better in all the aspects in terms of gross profit margin, operating profit margin, net profit margin, and return on capital than Old Mutual. In terms of efficiency ratios assesses ability to manage for a firm to manage its financial resources and debts. It's calculated by dividing operating expenses over operating revenue. So Old Mutual has 17% and NICO has 45%. So Nico is on the higher side again. Nico manages his assets and activities considerably much better and has a higher possibility of getting more profits. Key findings. Nico Holdings had a greater financial performance for the year 2022 than Old Mutual in respect to revenue, profits, shareholders' equity, financial ratios. However, Old Mutual had lower operating expenses, lower debt ratio, positive free cash flow. Conclusions and recommendations. Both firms have demonstrated strong financial performance. Overall, Nico Holdings performed much better than Old Mutual. In terms of recommendations, Old Mutual should strategize and focus on increasing its revenue and explore growth opportunities to improve financial performance. Nico Holdings should focus on reducing its debt ratio and improve on cash flow management and uphold its profitability index. Thank you.
So is it question time? Yes, please. Okay, so I've got a question for the group. So in terms of recommendation, what would you what would you recommend investors to buy shares? Is it am I going? Sorry, am I go ahead. So I was saying, what would you recommend the investors in terms of investment based on the two companies, the three companies you have presented? Which company do you think the investors can yield good returns?
Okay.
Let me take that one.
Okay. In terms of in response to your question, I believe the analysis has actually shown that Nico Holding is on the better side. That means in terms of attracting investors, that means investors would actually go for Nico, which has got at least better results as we have actually analyzed it.
I think just to add on what Calvin has said, I think it could be wrong to make an investment decision just based on financial statements for 1 year. Because we're just comparing these two companies based on the financial statements for 2022. But when we also compare with the previous year, 2021, Old Mutual performed much better. So I think in making investing decision, you can want to look at the cash flow or financial statements for a firm, maybe over a period of 2 or 3 years, and their financial projections, not just necessarily based on 1 year in which one company has performed much better, and you feel that's going to be the trend. Sure.
Okay, so maybe for me, just a quick question. Your comparison between Nico and Old Mutual, were you comparing Nico as a financial services or as a group against Old Mutual? Just to understand if it was a fair comparison, because as a group, Nico, we know it's got a couple of companies that are under Nico Group. So I just want to understand in that context.
Yeah, we compared the two, Nico as a group compared to Old Mutual. You know, through the presentation, we're saying the companies do a lot. They do insurance, property management, banking, just as Nico. You know, I think there's NBS Bank. They also do insurance. So the total revenue, we compared Nico as a group against Old Mutual as well as a group with all their subsidiaries as well. So we compared the total revenue of each group, the analysis, the profitability.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know, do we have any more questions, Tim? We've got 5 minutes to go with the group 1. All right, in this case, there are no questions. That means this marks the end of group 1 presentation. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
We can log out and get in the other one. Thank you.